Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we have Pythagorean part 2, and this is lesson 9.3. So we were practicing if we knew A and we knew B, but we don't always know just the leg. Sometimes we know the hypotenuse and one leg. And if I know those things, then I can find the other value of the leg. So I'm going to find B in this case. I'm going to have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I know what C is. I also know that it's the hypotenuse because, again, it is opposite of that right angle. So I know that 30 is going to be my hypotenuse or my C. I plug in 18 for A. I plug in 30 for C. We're going to use some basic equations here, and we're going to say, okay, 18 squared is 324 plus B squared equals 30 squared or 900. I want to get B squared by itself. So I'm going to subtract or do the inverse. So I'm going to subtract 324 from both sides. When I do, this becomes 0. And this, I'm going to bring my b squared down with my equal signs. And 900 minus 324 is 576. So b squared equals 576. But I want to know what b is. So I'm going to take the square root of b squared and the square root of 576. And I find that b is 24. So you're going to do like you had been for the Pythagorean, but you may end up having to use some of your equations and simply solving for a variable and isolating it to do so. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you're taking notes. This may be a situation where you want to take notes. There's going to be situations where you're just given numbers and you're going to need to determine if that is a right triangle. And so we're going to use what we call the converse of the Pythagorean. And so the theorem of the Pythagorean says, if a triangle is a right triangle, then a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You can reverse these parts of the statement, and the new statement is called the converse. So it's basically flip-flopping. And so I said converse, if a squared plus b squared equals c squared, then the triangle is a right triangle. Now please note, not all converses are always going to be true statements. But in this case, the Pythagorean theorem as a converse is true. You can use this to determine if a triangle is truly a right triangle. So if we can get a squared plus c squared to equal c squared, then we do know, in fact, we have a right triangle. Okay, we have a few to practice. So if we're given these side lengths, we want to see if we do, in fact, have a Pythagorean. Remember, the longest value is the hypotenuse. So whenever you have these values, whichever one is the longest is going to be your hypotenuse. So if we know the longest is our hypotenuse, we can go through and say, oh, 5 is going to be my hypotenuse. Oh, look here. Again, 5 is my hypotenuse. Over here, 41. Now, these just happen to be in numeric order from size, but they won't always. But you can easily go through and say, okay, all of those are going to be my hypotenuse. So I can take 2 squared, which is 4, 4 squared, which is 16, and 5 squared, which is going to be 25, because this can be my A, my B, and my C. So the purples are my C. They're my equals. Okay. 4 plus 6 is 20. C squared 5 times 5 is 25. This is not equal, so no, this is not a right triangle. If we come over here, we say 9 squared is 81, 4 squared is 1,600, 41 squared is 1,681. 81 plus 1,600 is 1,681, and that does equal 1,681. That checks. It is a right triangle. So 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25. So we have 9 plus 16 is 25, and that does equal 25. So again, this is a right triangle, and this one's called a special triangle. So we have the 3, 4, 5. That we know is always a triangle. So if you have something that can be proportionate, if I had a 6, 8, 10, I know that one is also going to be a right triangle without necessarily having to do the math. There are some special triangles that you'll learn more about next year, but 3, 4, 5 is definitely one of these little special triangles. So if I have a 6, 7, 8, 6 squared is 36, 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is 64. So 36 plus 49, and I messed up my math here, and I know a couple of you will catch that. That's going to be 85. I'm not sure where I got 84, but hopefully you were paying attention. I went, mistake. So 85 does not equal 64. So this does not make a right triangle. So determining if the right triangle, you just plug in the values, remembering the longest value is going to be your hypotenuse, so that's the same as your C value. Hopefully you are doing well with this, and I appreciate your efforts over spring break. I do understand that this is not what you want to be doing.